Time, I wanted to share a little bit about the developments in the coaching group and where it is headed in the future. So I have been very busy working on putting together a curriculum, basically approaching it from the perspective of I'm creating the best possible class on this topic that I'm capable of creating. I'm gonna do my absolute best, and then as we go, just evolve it, just make it better and better as we go. So that's kind of my approach to this curriculum that I'm building. But what I've put together so far is a 99-day masterclass based specifically upon what Neville Goddard teaches regarding imagination, a metaphysical masterclass on the topic of imagination, taught over the period of 99 days or about 14 weeks, which is about the average length of a college semester, and it's kind of arranged that way anyways. It's an amount of time a little bit longer than the 12-week course that we ran at the end of last year, giving a little bit more time to dive a little bit more deeply into some of the topics. The format will be a little different than what the coaching group has been to date, and more classroom style, which is really my wheelhouse, if I can say it that way. So I've been putting together, like I said, the curriculum for that, building a website for it. It's going to be hosted, it is hosted on a learning management system, which will make engagement with the structured aspect of it. There's gonna be structured learning modules, as well as live streams like this, topical lectures, group discussions, Q&As, that type of thing. It's going to be a mix of a variety of content, and it's going to dive deeply into a series of topics designed to illuminate the subject of imagination and highlight the skills that are associated with mastery when it comes to your imagination. That's actually the name of the course. I've named it Master Your Imagination. And it is scheduled to launch on February 10th. But like I said, I'm still in the process of putting the finishing touches on the curriculum, so I'm not going to say too much more than that right now, but I just wanted to give you guys that quick update about where we are in terms of what's coming next for the coaching group. I am very excited about tonight's topic. It's a topic that I've been thinking about and kind of working with for a while. I love this concept of timelines. And I'm excited to dive into that concept a little bit deeper tonight. And we're still gonna make it interactive. So tonight, as we go, I'm gonna ask some questions, and I'm gonna have you just type in your own words your answer, what you think the answer is to the question in the chat. And that will give us all kind of a social learning experience as we go as well. All right. So the topic for tonight is timelines. Timelines. So I'm going to invite you all, we're going to make this kind of interactive here for tonight's class. I'm going to invite you as we go for you to just type in, I'm going to prompt you, I'm going to have you type into the chat what you think the answer is to some of the prompts. Give me kind of your response to some of the prompts that I'm going to give you as we move through the discussion tonight. So the first prompt is, what is a timeline to you? Put it into your own words. What is a timeline? You can just put it in the chat, and then I will read off some of your responses, and we'll work our way through an in-depth engagement with this very interesting concept of a timeline. But while you are typing in your answers here, I'm going to give a little bit of a background on this topic. So the topic of timelines comes up when you start looking at manifestations. How do I go from my mental picture to that is in the fourth dimension to the evidence of my mental picture, or the evidence of my state in the third dimension, in the realm where I can touch, taste, smell, interact with it with my five senses? How does something emerge from the field of all possibilities and come into the world, the physical, so-called real world where I can interact with it? Well, part of the answer to that question is a timeline. And some answers about what is a timeline. So let's see here. So a memory of events, a timeline can be a memory of events, past or future. A timeline to me is always now. Timeline is the time it takes for a wish to manifest in the physical world. It's a writing representation from the past until now or forward. Yes. I like these examples that you guys are posting here. This is great. A measurement of memories that can be behind me or in front of me. Yes. Okay. So let's break it down a little bit here. So timeline. So the two words in timeline, time and line, right? So what is time? Let's take a look at what time is. Make sure we're clear on what time is before we dive deeper into what a timeline is. So time, like everything else, is an illusion. Time, like everything else, is a purposeful illusion. An illusion with a purpose. So if you understand the fundamental nature of reality, that everything is imagination and consciousness is the only reality, you understand that everything that you are perceiving is, on some level, an illusion, a purposeful illusion. And what that purpose is can vary, and a lot of that depends on what you believe the purpose is. After all, you are the meaning maker. But everything is a purposeful illusion. It serves some level of purpose, and a lot of times the purpose of any illusion is to reflect back to you some aspect of yourself. And you get into the concept of all things being a mirror. All of your daily experiences in reality are some sort of mirror to some aspect of yourself. Well, then everything is an illusion designed to show you some aspect of yourself. Well, time is no different. Time is an illusion, and it is a purposeful illusion. Now, when I was preparing the notes for this lecture, I was thinking, what is time? And the first thing I thought was, well, time doesn't actually exist. Not really. It's not really a tangible thing. It's more of an aspect or an element of reality. And so I started thinking, I was like, okay, so an aspect or an element of reality, an illusion, but it's an aspect or element of reality. So it's like, okay, purposeful illusion. What is the purpose of time? And what came to me is that time, in a way, is part of a mechanism for experiencing infinity. I'm going to say that again. Time is part of a mechanism for experiencing infinity. So when I understand that I am all imagination and that consciousness is the only reality, then I can be all things at all times. That is a state, being all things at all times. But when I'm being all things at all times and I'm connected to my infinite nature, I'm not able to have individual experiences that are those mirrors to reflect me aspects of myself. So I need some way to divide up my infinite nature into levels of finite experiences, into containers of finite experiences. And time is one of the mechanisms that I can do that with. Time is an illusion designed to help me divide up my infinite nature so that I can experience it smoothly. So I can experience aspects of myself, experience the mirrors of myself, the mirrors of my infinite nature smoothly. And that was the other thing that is key to think about time. Time moves smoothly. It adds a orchestration in a way, a sequencing in a way. It lines things up. It creates a purposeful unfolding. Now, if you Google what is time, Google will tell you that time at its root is a measurement. Time is a measurement. For instance, a clock is a measurement. A lot of our international clocks are called atomic clocks. And an atomic clock is based on the measurement of the vibrational rate of an atom. That's why it's called an atomic clock. And it's something that we found to be extremely consistent, this vibrational rate of an atom. So because it's extremely consistent and a reliable source, something that we can measure, that it reliably gives us a stream of information, a stream of segmentation for our experience of reality, that's part of how we measure time. Is we measure time by increments. It's an incremental measurement. Another way to look at time could be as a knife, dividing up experiences. If everything was in your whole life was happening all at the same time, you'd be completely overwhelmed. In this form, in this 3D form, your 3D senses would be completely overwhelmed if everything in the field of all possibilities was occurring all at once. Now, it technically is. It technically is. Technically, the field of all possibilities is occurring all at once. But from our perspective, in this form, we are limited by time. It's like the knife that cuts up our infinite nature so that we can experience segments one after another, sequentially. Time is a knife dividing up experiences, and it creates the illusion of a natural unfolding. It sequences things, a sequence of events, a timeline. A natural unfolding of what seems to be successive experiences. And it gives a smoothness to the dream, to your daily experience. The segmentation of time gives you a smoothness. So another way to look at time is the frame rate of reality. What is the frame rate of reality? So let me give you a little bit of a background if you're not familiar with that term, frame rate. Not familiar with the term frame rate. Before I do that, let me read a couple more of these answers here. A measurement of memories that can be behind me or in front of me. Past, present, future, a picture on a screen. Scientific question. If a person hit their head and is in a state of a coma or a concussion and forgets who they were before in the past, unless they are reminded of who they were, it means we all need a big hit to the head to forget the old man and build the identity of the new man. So that would be an example of a timeline hop, Adam, and we're going to get to that in a minute. So that's an excellent foreshadowing too. Okay, so what is frame rate? So frame rate is a term that comes from the world of computing, particularly graphics. And to give you an example, it's like a rendering. So it's like taking information and arranging it in a certain configuration so that it can be observed. That's what rendering is. So frame rate is the fastest rate or the consistent rate at which something is rendered by a computer system. So if you think about like an Xbox game or computer game or something like that, like a 3D game, you have a rendering engine that is measuring everything happening in the game and then making updates to the environment of the game at a consistent frame rate. So it's like it's measuring the variables that are present within the environment of the game and then making an update to the environment of the game based on those measurements. So it's taking into account, your actions as the player in the game and the actions of the other players in the game, the actions of the non-human characters in the game, all of the variables that are happening in the game, everything is being measured and then being rendered and projected into this environment that you can interact with. Kind of doesn't sound that different from our daily reality, does it? This concept of the frame rate of reality, if you think about it, if you understand the nature that all is consciousness, and that consciousness is the observer, and that observation creates reality. If you understand that concept, then you understand that at the fundamental level, there's a frame rate of observation. A frame rate of observation. So if the universe as a whole, I'm talking the whole thing right now, if the universe as a whole is consciousness, and the universe as a whole is consciousness experiencing itself, then the way that consciousness experiences itself is by measuring all of the internal variables within the body of consciousness at a specific frame rate, dividing it into time so that we can experience it sequentially through our observation. Okay, so tying this into the concept of timelines. So if we understand that time is at its fundamental nature a measurement, right? Then a timeline becomes a body of measurements. A body of measurements. Another way to say a body of measurements would be to say an experience. An experience can be considered or looked at, viewed through the perspective of being a body of measurements. Sensory impressions. Measurements makes it sound very scientific, very logical, analytical, left brain. But I'm not just saying it that way. It can even just be what happened. You know, like you literally registered a series of events that appeared to unfold to the evidence of your senses around you, and that impression of things, that's a body of measurements. That's my experience of whatever the event was that occurred. So if a timeline is a body of measurements, and an experience can also be considered to be a body of measurements, then a timeline, in theory, would be a body of experiences. So now that we've laid a little bit of a foundation for understanding what a timeline is, how do we apply it to creating an imagination? So our timeline is determined in a lot of ways, or is fundamentally related to, I'm not going to say necessarily determined, but fundamentally related to our realm of possibility. So what we believe to be possible for us is directly connected to what is likely to occur in our lives, in our reality. We actually have filtering mechanisms built into our consciousness to basically prevent us from being able to process information that is not aligned with our body of beliefs, what we believe is possible. We actually have filtering mechanisms that a lot of times, if something that we believe is impossible happens, our filtering mechanisms will prevent us from really being able to see it happening. So our timeline is fundamentally related to our realm of possibility. What we believe is possible. Based on what we believe is possible, there is a realm. You can almost consider it to be like a container. You know, based on what I believe is possible, these are the walls of my reality. And these walls contain the likely probable outcomes. From the field of all possibilities, I've put this little sphere around me that is basically the limitations of my beliefs. This is what I believe is possible for me to experience. And it's like my little world that I construct around me. And that little world, that little bubble that I construct around me that is consists of all of the things I believe is possible, and thus leads to my body of reactions, which is a state of being. If you remember, a state of being is a body of reactions to external stimuli. If my reactions are based on what I believe is true and what I believe is possible, then my timeline is literally determined by this bubble that I move through the experience of my daily reality with this bubble around me that is a filter of based on what I believe is possible. And as I move through my daily experience and I encounter relationships with other aspects of myself, the mirrors, as I encounter my mirrors, things reflecting back to me my nature, I am, as the observer, the meaning maker. And I assign meaning to the things that happen within my life based on who I believe I am. And who I believe I am determines the timeline that I'm on. Now, in our human form, with an average lifespan of 80 to 90 years, it seems, it's an illusion, but it seems like we have a linear experience of time. A linear experience of time, birth to death, one long timeline. And it's actually more complex than that. As Neville teaches, time is not linear, time is circular and cyclical. Now we're going to get into the concept of circular time in a lot more detail in the upcoming class. But for tonight's discussion, let's go ahead and adopt this concept, this illusion of linear time, to help us build a concept for how to use this idea of concepts in our everyday life, in our practice, as a skilled understanding, an element of our wisdom. Understanding, there's an element of wisdom to understanding timelines. So, considering that looking at our lives as being linear, this is our timeline, this is when we were born, and this is where we die, right? But the timeline is not written in stone. As we move along this timeline, we are making choices and we are assigning meaning. We are exhibiting a body of reactions. We are developing and maintaining patterns of behavior. And based on those decisions that we make, the meanings that we assign, the patterns of behavior that we develop, in each moment as we're moving through, here's our ultimate, the end of our life and ultimately where we'll end up, right? And there's all these different paths that we could take that all kind of end up here, one way or another. But we can choose our experience. We can choose our timeline between here, and we choose it in every single moment as it unfolds, based on what we believe is possible, who we believe we are, our body of reactions, our body of beliefs. We select our timeline. And this is, there's an infinite aspect to this, because there's big aspects of my timeline, and there's super pointed, tiny, specific aspects of my timeline. Right? There's literally, it's like an infinite resolution thing. Everything from this aspect of my timeline being that I'm currently experiencing being human. That's an aspect of my timeline, and that's a really, really big one. And that right there paints a specific container of experiences that I'm likely to have in my so-called experience of life, this linear experience of life. Just the mere fact that I'm experiencing being human makes a certain container of likely probable experiences and outcomes of all of the chain of events that comprise my timeline. So that's an example of a really, really big one. And it can get a lot more specific than that too. It can be even as simple as what you choose for breakfast. What you choose to eat for breakfast can have a perhaps a little bit more minor effect upon your timeline, but it still affects your timeline. Because every decision that you make ultimately is measured by consciousness. Coming back to the frame rate of reality, you are the observer and you make decisions and interact and expend energy and adjust and engage with the mirrors, with yourself in each moment. And as you do so, the dream is reflecting back to you the evidence of who you believe you are. It's measuring your interaction, all interactions with itself, really. The dream is measuring everything and then updating at the refresh rate of reality, if you will, the sequence of events that comprise your life. Your timeline. So a timeline could be considered, another way of saying it, would be a body of probable outcomes based upon our patterns of behavior, based upon our beliefs. They go hand in hand. Our patterns of behavior are based on who we believe we are and our beliefs about reality, what we believe is true. And our beliefs and patterns of beliefs and patterns of behavior which form our beliefs and vice versa create a body of probable outcomes in our life. Could be, again, big or small, specific situations or the big picture altogether. This is, an 80, 90-year lifespan. You can look at it either way, and this is a very large topic, but critically important to really understanding. Again, there's an element of wisdom to this, and that's what I hope to illuminate tonight. This element of wisdom to understanding this concept of timelines. So when you understand that a timeline is a body of probable outcomes based on our patterns of behavior, then you also understand that our timelines can be altered when we alter our pattern of behavior. This ties in a little bit more to this nature of circular time. The idea that everything comes around over and over again, stand-ins, right? So stand-ins for different aspects of ourselves. We kind of do this little tour of different energies related to who we are, different mirrors upon different aspects of our infinite nature. And as we come around, based on who we believe we are, that's how we tend to react, our pattern of behaviors. And as long as we keep reacting the same way, we just keep going around and around and around. But as we start to wake up to the mirrors, as we start to wake up to these expanded aspects and understandings of who we are and how the whole game works, we can start to change the way that we interact with specific elements of our daily experience consciously. The conscious pattern interrupt. We can interrupt the pattern consciously. In part, one of the ways to do that is by changing our body of beliefs. Interrupting a pattern of behavior and changing our body of beliefs. It's a way to shift a timeline, to change a timeline. And that introduces the concept of the timeline hop. This is something that we can add to our lexicon of ways to talk about our experience of manifesting our reality. It's really important to have tools, words. Words are tools to describe otherwise what can be somewhat ephemeral aspects of reality. And I think that timeline hop is a great word, that is a great tool that can be used to talk about things, talk about our experience of reality unfolding. So what is a timeline hop? Well, timeline hop is a change in timelines, yes, but specifically, it's an expansion in that body of probable outcomes that is based upon our pattern of behavior and our pattern of beliefs. Again, those two go hand in hand. An expansion in our body of probable outcomes based on our behavior and beliefs about what's possible. So a timeline hop would be an expansion in our beliefs about what's possible, which unlocks an expansion in the body of probable outcomes. So I'm going to invite you to write in the chat an example of a timeline hop. Give me an example of a timeline hop. Okay, and while you're typing that, I'm going to read some of the comments here because there's some really good ones. If you saw a flying elephant, you would completely freak out. But you may see a picture of a flying elephant on a magazine ad. That's still a manifestation, but it's within your framework of what you believe is possible. It's a great example. If you don't believe it's possible for elephants to fly, doesn't mean that they can't. I mean, I don't know if they can or not, right? I've never seen one do it. The bottom line is, though, the example applies. It's one of those things that can manifest within your container of what you believe is possible. Your sphere. One of my greatest discoveries is that time is cyclical and circular. Interrupt negative thought patterns. A question, if I change myself, is my stand-in going to go away? It'll change. If you change yourself, it's not that your stand-in is just literally a stand-in for an aspect of your own consciousness. So when that aspect of your consciousness shifts, that stand-in shifts as well. So it becomes, and we're going to talk a lot more about this, archetypes and the ways that situations unfold in the dreams, like whole different ways of looking at reality and kind of decoding reality. But a stand-in is usually a stand-in for a certain aspect of your being or of your beliefs. And it's a way for you to engage that aspect of yourself. And when you shift your beliefs about that, your experience of the stand-in will change. The stand-in may change altogether. May become a different stand-in, may become a different situation altogether. And a lot of times it'll be a similar energy, but experienced on a different level, if that makes sense. It's like a different polarization of the same energy. It's like there's infinite ways to experience any particular energy, and we'll get into that a lot more as we go. All right, let's see examples of timeline hops. This group is my dream come true. This group was a timeline hop for me, and for a lot of you as well. Timeline hop. Shifting your perspective from negative to positive, or vice versa, about your current circumstances is a timeline hop. Yes. Yes, that's a perfect example. Shifting your perspective. A perspective is a timeline hop because everything, I'll say it again, everything is a perspective. You are the meaning maker. You assign meaning as the observer. As consciousness, you assign meaning. You are the meaning maker. Thus, a shift in your perception, a shift in your perspective is a shift in your timeline, a timeline hop. Revision is a timeline hop. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Revision is a timeline hop. Revising something that happened. Writing an alternate scenario, which is essentially selecting a different outcome from the field of all possibilities. Assigning a different meaning. Revision. Assigning a different meaning. Raising anything to the level of love is a timeline hop because it dramatically expands your body of probable outcomes. Because love is expansion, whereas fear is limitation and contraction. Love feels like more possibilities, expanded possibilities, more options, freedom. Whereas fear feels like less possibilities, contraction, limitation, getting smaller, less options, less opportunity. When I raise something to the level of love, I typically see more possibility out of it. So when let's say a triggering situation occurs, right? So we're working our way through our cyclical time and here comes that energy that just always seems to provoke us. But this time we're aware of it. We're grounded, we're rooted, we're centered in our heart. This time when that stimulus pops up in our awareness, we're like, aha, I see you. I see you. And this time, instead of just allowing myself to react, this time I am going to take the time, exercise the skill set that I have, and I'm going to raise my experience of this relationship, whatever's happening. It could be a circumstance, person, a conversation, whatever it is. I'm going to take this tool that I have and I'm going to apply it. And I'm going to raise this experience to the level of love. And when you do that, you take whatever the old man would have responded to. So however the old man would have responded to that energy, or has responded in the past to that energy popping up in your awareness, the old man would have responded from a place of fear, from a place of limitation, would have assigned meaning that means something that you don't want it to mean, that limits your possibilities in some way. But by engaging with that stimulus, from the place of, again, rootedness, groundedness, connectedness, your heart, and raising it to the level of love, saying, I see you, I know that you are me, again, applies to literally anything. I know that you are me. I know that you are here to show me an aspect of myself. I am grateful. That's a key part of this process, expressing gratitude for it coming to show you who you are. Thank you for showing me myself. Thank you for showing me what my limitations are. And then raising it to the level of love where you can actually love the fact that came around because it has provoked your expansion. That takes what you had previously assigned a negative meaning to, something that means, contraction or limitation or something that's less, raising it to the level of love, your possibilities have now expanded because there's now other meanings that you can apply to the situation that are closer to the truth. Closer to the truth, meaning closer to alignment with your infinite nature. That's what I mean by closer to the truth. Your nature is infinite. You select an experience of limitation. Everything that you experience is, by definition, a limitation. Whether it's positive or it's negative, it's still a limitation in some way because, again, your truest nature is infinite, infinite. So everything is a limitation. But the whole point of imagining wisely is to choose the limitations that serve you, that serve your expansion, that serve your growth, that are rooted in a place of love. They're rooted in a place of wisdom. I'm wisely choosing my limitations. I'm wisely choosing to assign my meaning in a way that serves my purposes, in a way that serves as a foundation for my growth, for my expansion, as a consciousness, as a human, and in my experience. Consciously choosing my timeline, I'm consciously choosing my timeline hops. An example of a timeline hop may be coming from the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Yes. Coming from, so thinking from the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Setting goals and visualization is also an example of a timeline hop. Lying on a Barbados beach today is a timeline hop. How right you are. Rejecting the lag time between the external present and rejecting the diagnosis of those outside of you are examples of timeline hops. Yes. So how do you know that a timeline hop has occurred? How do you know that a timeline hop has occurred? As we think about that, I want to take a moment and just make this whole concept very, very practical. Very practical. So I know, you start talking about time and illusion and all this type of stuff, it can get pretty ethereal pretty quickly. And there's a place for that too, but man, making it practical is really the point. How do we apply this to our daily lives? Okay. So the idea, the whole reason I'm talking about timelines tonight is because being in this group, you have selected a timeline of expansion. You have in some way assigned meaning to your experience, and that meaning is that your experience is, the purpose of it in some way is to expand. It's to expand in terms of consciousness. That's some of the meaning that you're giving your infinite nature. You're saying, okay, I understand I'm an infinite nature, and part of my purpose must be to expand, so I'm going to join a group that will help me do exactly that. Just on some level, that represents a desire to expand. So by being in this group and participating in these exercises, you're in a situation where you are continuously upgrading your experience, your daily experience, because you're an aware observer, right? You're awake. You're awake to what's going on, and when the shadows come around and throw punches at you, you're not trying to punch back at the shadows because you understand that they're just shadows. They're all just aspects of yourself. I am the dream, right? So when you understand that, this is where the wisdom comes into play. When you understand that, any situation, it's getting good, guys. Any situation that you find yourself in, you can take a moment and you can say, what timeline am I sitting in right now in this moment based on what's just come up? And you can feel, this is something you can feel into. You can feel in, what timeline am I sitting in based on what's coming up right now? And it's a way to select actions to take by this awareness of timelines. If you understand that every action that you take affects your timeline, every action, every inaction, every thought, every feeling, everything that has some aspect of energy invested in it is going to shift your timeline in some way. Some actions, some thoughts, some feelings, some things. It's all about the intensity of your imagination, right? So some things are going to have massive timeline hops, and some things are going to be just tiny little adjustments within a broader channel of this is my body of probable outcomes. So for instance, in most cases, if I have granola for breakfast instead of an egg, it's not going to change my entire life. But it may change an aspect of my experience later on in the day that could emerge in any way imaginable. But you get what I'm saying there, right? There's like the tiny little aspects, which are like turning little dials. And then there's like huge aspects, which is like switching train tracks altogether and going to a completely different destination. Tiny adjustments, massive adjustments. In any situation, you have the opportunity to do a timeline hop. And a lot of it's going to come down to doing conscious pattern interrupts. Because when you get clear on the state of being that is the man or the woman you desire to be, when you spend time grounded in that feeling, practicing that feeling, this is literally like a character that we practice getting into character daily. And we will be doing it together in this 99-day course coming up. It's all about practicing. It's all about honing the experience of being in the end, being in that ideal state. And as you practice that state daily, more and more often, as you're going around that merry-go-round of time and stimulus pops up in your outer world and says, hey, look at this aspect of yourself, right? And you see that and you're like, oh, this is an aspect of myself. How am I going to react this time? And you take a moment and you say, I know who I desire to be. And when I know who I desire to be, I can align my reaction to the situation in a way that aligns my timeline with the timeline of the man or the woman that I desire to be. I can select my response to situations that happen in my life, being aware of the timeline impact. I can make conscious timeline hops. I can purposefully open up expanded realms of possibility by being aware that there is a timeline associated with every thought, feeling, action, and behavior. Belief. Thought, feeling, action, behavior, and belief. I can consciously select my timeline. I can consciously do a conscious pattern interrupt, employ a conscious pattern interrupt with the distinct and direct intention of creating a timeline hop. Again, timeline hop being an expansion in probable outcomes. Every time a situation comes up and you choose to react from the new man instead of the old man, you just took a timeline hop. Every time you choose to react to your so-called outer world or inner world, really, any reaction, inner or outer, from the feeling of the wish fulfilled, from the state of the man or the woman you desire to be, that is a timeline hop. Because it aligns you with a body of probable outcomes that are very closely aligned with your dreams. What you are dreaming into reality. You're aligning your timeline with what you desire to experience. You are selecting from the field of all possible outcomes. You can't always choose precise experiences. As Adam had pointed out earlier, it's all going to occur within the realm of what you believe is possible. All of it is going to occur within the realm of what you believe is possible. So what's up to you in terms of manifestation, in terms of creating your reality, is to create your body of probable outcomes so that your field of how things can show up in your life is this big. instead of this big. Timeline hop is like removing the dark glasses of limitation. Different perspective. Old man to new man is a timeline hop. Yes. Signs follow, they do not proceed, because they're evidence of your timeline. The timeline hop occurs first. Then you experience from a body of probable outcomes aligned with the timeline in which you stand. So you're in a state of being and you're on a timeline. And based on the interaction between your state of being and your timeline, that is the likely field of probable outcomes that you are likely to experience within your lifetime. It's a combination of those aspects. Is a timeline hop a tool to be used only in the now? It's a good question, because it kind of brings up the concept of revision, this idea that me in this present moment affects me in the past, affects me in the future, all time exists all at once. So is a timeline hop only now, or could a timeline hop be done retroactively? Play with the idea. Play with the idea of how timeline hops can be applied to any situation. Past, present, future. I mean, it's all now, right? In a way, but play with it, because there's a lot of power and possibility in understanding how timelines play out. One way of doing a conscious timeline hop that is just coming to me that I want to share in this moment. A wealthy walk can be an example of a timeline hop. A wealthy drive can be an example of a timeline hop. As I was experimenting with this concept of the timeline hop a couple of months ago, I went on a timeline hop drive where I literally just got into the car, no navigation, GPS or anything. I just started driving, and I just took turns randomly based on impulse. And I went on maybe an hour and 90-minute drive, something like that. And the whole point of that was, I was like, I am going to break so far out of my pattern of, we all move through life in patterns. So it's like, we tend to live in a certain area. We tend to shop within a certain number of stores. It's all kind of like within this realm. It's like, it's kind of like the sphere of our routine in some way. And I was like, I am going to break all of those molds. And for 90 minutes, I'm literally just going to go anywhere that I've never been before. And it's an example of potentially of a timeline hop, because if you think about how every action that you take has some sort of impact on your timeline, when you take actions consciously with the intent of impacting your timeline, that can be very powerful. You can set the intention to do something like a wealthy walk, a wealthy drive, a timeline hop drive. And you can say, when I come back from this, or at the end of this, I'll have a new timeline. Like, you can set that as your intention. So what do I mean by that? What is a new timeline? New timeline is an expansion in my beliefs and patterns of behavior about what's possible. So how do you know a timeline hop has occurred? When you think differently. A timeline hop has occurred when your perspective has shifted, when you think differently, when you see things differently, when a new possibility has become integrated into your consciousness. So it's one thing to think of something. It's one thing to think of success. Oh, it'll be nice when my business has X number of clients and my income is X amount of dollars and I get to spend most of my time doing such and such. That's thinking of it. And then you go on a wealthy walk, you work your way into that state of being, and by the end of the wealthy walk, you already have X number of clients. You're already making X amount of dollars. You already spend your time doing those things that before, oh, wouldn't it be nice if? Now you are in that state. And because you are in that state, you have now aligned your timeline. You've hopped onto the timeline where now that is within the body of probable outcomes. It takes something that is infinite and might or might not happen and now makes it likely. A timeline hop can make something that was previously improbable likely. And you can employ this consciously with wisdom. You can look at invitations as they occur within your world. As things pop up in your world, these invitations, you can say, what is the timeline associated with me accepting or rejecting this invitation? It could be as simple as someone asking you out to coffee. It could be a job offer. It could be some sort of sponsorship or partnership type offer. Invitation. It could even be a party. What is the timeline associated with this invitation? Is the timeline of me accepting this invitation aligned with the ideal state, with me living in the end? Or is this an invitation my old man would accept, but not the new? Whether I accept or reject this invitation is evidence of who I believe I am. If I believe that I exist in a state of lack, I don't have a lot of opportunities available to me, any opportunity that pops up, I'm going to jump at because I believe in this limitation of opportunities. I'm going to jump for the low-hanging fruit. That's going to affect my timeline. Because as I'm spending time and energy and focus on the low-hanging fruit, the opportunity, whatever it is, that's time, focus, and energy that is not being spent, not being invested in the timeline of the wish fulfilled. Can it still advance me towards my goal? Well, yes, because everything is an experience designed in some way to give us an experience of ourselves. So you can accept invitations that later you can look back and say, wow, maybe not the best investment, but that's where wisdom comes into play. That's where we learn. This is how, a lot of times it's by selecting the timelines we don't want, which is how we learn and gain wisdom on the timelines so that we can align with the timelines we do want. Gate crashing a party is a timeline hop. Yes. If the man or the woman that you most desire to be, if part of their body of behavior, body and pattern of behaviors, is gate crashing a party, you better believe that's a timeline hop. Anytime you do something that's quote unquote out of character, but obviously you maybe out of the old character, right? The old man's character. Out of the old character and in new character, that is a timeline hop. conscious timeline hops. How does intuition come into play with timelines? Yes, so your intuition is really your access to thinking deeply about timelines and about the impact of timelines. Because your intuition is going to be what tells you, what illuminates for you, what timeline a specific action or behavior is aligned with. Your intuition becomes an exceptionally powerful tool when you are clear on the state of the man or the woman that you desire to be. So if you spend time every day practicing the feeling, I posted in the Facebook group earlier this week just a brief little concept. A key aspect of mastery is practice. Practice every day the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You are literally tuning the antenna of your consciousness to the state you desire to inhabit. It's like paving a road. And the more often that you're in there, in the silence, feeling the state of the wish fulfilled, the smoother that road surface. You're literally ingraining new patterns of behavior. And as you get really clear on what that feels like, your intuition will tell you as invitations, opportunities, circumstances, situations, conversations, people emerge in your daily experience of reality. Your intuition will guide you to respond from the feeling of the wish fulfilled, because now you know what it feels like. You have that anchor, you have that reference. You've practiced. You've practiced the character that you are playing in this drama, the intentional character, as opposed to the asleep, more zombie type character that perhaps the old man was, the old man or the old woman. The old man or the old woman perhaps was unconscious about the part that they were playing, was perhaps not so much aware that their reality was based upon their body of reactions and that their body of probable outcomes was based upon their beliefs and patterns of beliefs. Maybe the old you wasn't aware of that, and the new you now is aware of that. And intuition is the key that unlocks that awareness. Intuition is the guide. You connect deeply to the desired state, the state of the wish fulfilled, which is a feeling. You connect deeply to the feeling, this is who I am. And then as invitations pop up in your world, you respond to them based on your intuition of how your response is aligning with that feeling. Respond in alignment with the feeling. Consciously creating timeline hops. So a timeline hop, one more concept here. I know we're getting a little short on time. A timeline hop, I would also like to characterize a timeline hop as the very, very first piece of evidence of the wish fulfilled. The first evidence of the wish fulfilled. Signs follow, they do not precede. What do they follow? The timeline hop. They follow the timeline hop. You know that the wish is fulfilled. You are aligned with the fulfilled wish when the timeline hop occurs. Because now, once that timeline hop has been selected and has occurred, I am that I am. And that is the first evidence. My conscious awareness that I am is the first evidence to emerge within my daily experience of reality. The first evidence emerges up here. And then it emerges in my so-called external reality. So a timeline hop is the very first step. The timeline hop can occur up here. Usually it occurs up here. But you can also call external events timeline hops too. but it occurs up here first. So an external event may be a symptom or evidence of a timeline hop that occurs up here first. So it's I've achieved a timeline hop up here in my consciousness, and I'm now aware of expanded possibilities. My body probable outcomes has expanded, and then now something emerges in my life. Maybe I get a phone call from somebody that what that person tells me on the phone represents a timeline hop, because now I'm on a whole different trajectory for what I'm creating in my life. Just to give you like an example, again, making it practical, real world example. Timeline hop happens first up here, and then evidence of that can occur in the real, so-called real physical world. So one of the ways that I would like to invite you all to integrate this concept into your practice of mastery, and even the conversations that occur within the group, whether it be in the Facebook group or just amongst ourselves or whatever it is. One way to share with someone else that an expansion has occurred for you is simply to say that. Say, my timeline hop has happened. I'm experiencing timeline hops. You know, you can share with someone that you feel stuck in some way. You know, man, I feel like I there's this particular thing that keeps coming around, and like, you know, I'm doing my best to be aware of it and to shift my response of it, and just whatever I'm present to, right? And then to indicate that something has moved. There's been a movement in mind. You can say, oh, I had a timeline hop. Hey, what happened with so-and-so? Oh, timeline hop. Things shifted powerfully. Timeline hop. Let us know when your timeline hop has occurred. We're imagining wisely on your behalf. Right? So it's a mechanism, this term, this concept, timeline hop. It's a mechanism for referring to this key aspect of us emerging into the highest, brightest, fullest, most beautiful versions of ourselves, the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And we take timeline hops to get there. Big and small. Awesome. It's our practice, just like a doctor's practice, a dentist's practice. Why do they call it practice? Because practice is an element of mastery, something ongoing. I talk a lot about mastery in the master's class. A lot about mastery. Because at the end of the day, when you really truly understand who you are, this is the one skill you must master. Imagination. Master your imagination. A lawyer's practice, our thinking practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Timeline hops. So the question is, are timeline hops conscious or also unconsciously appearing? Yes, they can appear unconsciously. Your timeline can shift unconsciously. I mean, while I was sleeping in my younger years, sleeping throughout my experience of life, not really aware, I took all kinds of timeline hops left and right and wasn't even aware that that's what was happening. It was just snoozing, doing my thing. Huge timeline hops. I can look back now at my timeline and I can see the decisions that I made that represented massive timeline hops for me. They can happen unconsciously, but the power and the wisdom is in applying the concept consciously. with your awareness, awareness of what's going on, awareness of how things unfold, awareness of your experience, being aware, and choosing consciously your timeline. I hope that this discussion tonight was a timeline hop for you. I hope that the expanding awareness of the concept of timelines and timeline hops is in and of itself a timeline hop for you. Because it'll allow you to more consciously engage with invitations as they arise in your daily experience, allowing you to consciously choose your timeline, allowing you to identify and celebrate when timeline hops occur that are in alignment with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. For me, this group has been a massive timeline hop because the possibilities, the body of probable outcomes for me and my experience of life have expanded dramatically as a result of engaging in this group. Whole different set of probable outcomes. Things that would not have been on my timeline had I not taken this step. Whole expanded sphere of possible outcomes. And I'll be taking it even further because I'm engaging and embracing it consciously, taking it even further next month as the course begins and we take it to the next level. Expand even further in our timelines. Timeline hops can be both negative and positive, particularly if you are not imagining wisely. Yes, well said. Couldn't say that any better. Yes. But they can be employed consciously, and that's where the power is. Consciously with wisdom. Okay. Awesome. So that is going to wrap up the live stream for tonight. We are going to be going into more detail about timelines, circular time, the spiral, all of these concepts that, if you're one of those people that wants to get off the bus at I'm all imagination, like, oh, okay, that's enough for me. I just needed to know that I'm all imagination. You want to get off the bus and leave the journey at that point, you probably don't need this master's class. But for those of you that see that you are all imagination and understand that given that assumption, I am all imagination, the only thing that makes sense is to master your imagination. It is critically important to develop a fluency with these concepts. It's an aspect of mastery is fluency. To become fluent in the tools of imagination. And that is the focus of this group going forward. Well, it's been a focus of this group the whole time, but it's getting even more so, even further going forward. We'll be expanding deeply with these concepts, and the goal going forward, in the spirit of developing fluency, is to develop the skills and tools associated with a mastered imagination, and also to develop the ability to speak about imagination fluently, clearly, plenty of practice talking about these concepts, have a lexicon, a body of words, a language to use to talk about these concepts. They don't need to be all ethereal and difficult to explain. They can be easily explained, and that's what I aim to do. I aim to help build a bridge. Together we'll build a bridge to these concepts and build a community dialogue about them, supporting everyone's path to mastery. Okay, so that wraps it up for tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining me in the live stream. I'll be back next week with another topic, and I will be posting more information about the group going forward so that you can start to prepare. It will be taught in the format of a semester-long college class, and will probably require a little bit more time during the week than what the previous coaching group has required. And of course, in the meantime of developing this next curriculum, it's been kind of relaxed. But an aspect of, if one of the key aspects of mastery is practice, this 14-week experience will be the opportunity to practice every single day. And I know a lot of you are anyways practicing every single day, but this is just going to encourage you even farther and even further in that practice. So we'll be building that on as we go. Timeline hopping off to bed. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will see you next week. And until then, imagine wisely, my friends. Good night.